Hello, my name is Dr. Sara Henning, and my talk today is called Give It Back to the Body, Writing Toward Pleasure in the Creative Writing Classroom. Why does anyone pick up a pen to begin a creative writing practice? This is an age-old question, but one that we as creative writing instructors ought to keep at the forefront of our minds. A calling, the desire to be the next great writer, to be a voice of change in one's community. These are all noble answers, but at the bottom of each of these exists one word: pleasure. If it didn't bring a sense of pleasure, joy in the physical act of creation, no one would do it. As creative writing instructors, we have been challenged by many different forces in recent history. University models motivated by professionalization initiatives over love of learning. A global pandemic which ushered in hybrid, online, and multimodal models of classroom management. And outdated workshop models which silence and marginalize vulnerable populations. As a result, many students see writing as work, something to be scrutinized and judged, rather than a pleasurable act of communicating art. In my creative writing courses at Stephen F. Austin State University, I have adapted pedagogical practices to bring pleasure back to the classroom. I have used methods from two different sources with great success. Natalie Goldberg's writing as practice model, elucidated in her best-selling book, Writing Down the Bones, and the poetry CrossFit model proposed by the Sundress Academy for the Arts. Natalie Goldberg's Writing Down the Bones developed several useful premises I like to co-opt in my classroom. The most important being that writing is a practice. In her chapter, Writing is Practice, Goldberg contends, like running, the more you do it, the better you get at it. Her goal of filling a notebook a month values practice over the singular creative act. According to Goldberg, think of writing practice as loving arms you come to illogically and incoherently. It is our wild forest where we gather energy before going to prune our garden, write our fine books and novels. Goldberg's writing as practice model removes pressure from the writer, allowing the writer permission to sit down with the least expectation, say, I am free to write the worst junk in the world. Such a process, as Goldberg conceives it, centers on committing oneself to daily timed exercise. The rules are simple. To pick a certain interval, 10 to 20 minutes, and write continuously without the intervention of the editor's mind. By doing so, Goldberg believes that one can write what your mind actually sees and feels, not what it thinks it should see or feel. I often begin class by asking students to do a 5 to 10 minute timed writing exercise before we launch into the day's work. On days we are not in class, I urge students to keep the practice going. I have found that such a practice causes students to detach their egos from the product on the page, allowing them to develop a craftsman-like attitude toward writing. By taking the fear out of writing through regular low-stakes practice, students find their way back to seeing writing as a physical, pleasurable activity. Related to Goldberg's model is the Sundress Academy for the Arts' generative workshop series model, Poetry CrossFit. According to Dr. Erin Elizabeth Smith, Executive Director of the Sundress Academy for the Arts, Poetry CrossFit isn't about throwing tires or heavy ropes, but the idea of confusing our muscles is the same. This generative workshop series will give you prompts, rules, obstructions, and more to write 3 poems in 2 hours. Writers will write together for 30 minutes, be invited to share new work, and then given a new set of prompts. The idea isn't that we are writing perfect drafts, but instead creating clay that can then be edited and turned into art later. Co-opting aspects of the CrossFit method in the classroom has meant for me, as an instructor, providing students multiple, collaborative, timed writing opportunities to practice creativity. Similar to the Pomodoro technique, I provide students prompts in which to write several drafts in quick succession. After the timer goes off, students may volunteer to read their efforts to the class. Then the class moves on to the next writing assignment. In my experience over the past several semesters, students find delight writing in the timed setting, often telling me that those minutes in class are more productive than weeks spent on their own. In my classroom, the poetry CrossFit model works especially well when students lack confidence in the writing material, such as when practicing prosody, evident in forms such as the sonnet and the villanelle, writing in highly repetitive forms, such as the sestina, or when delving into vulnerable topics. As an example, in my fall 2020 intermediate poetry workshop, students were asked to identify their least favorite things. I chose 6 words at random: tattoo, wasp, coconut, cockroach, ignorance, and burrito. Students were assigned to write a 15-minute sestina using the class-curated words as the required end words. Most students finished the sestina in the 15-minute period, citing that the process was both fun and exhilarating. In my talk today, I've shared 2 different pedagogical models for bringing pleasure back into the creative writing classroom: Natalie Goldberg's Writing as Practice model and the Sundress Academy for the Arts' Poetry CrossFit model. I hope that you find these techniques useful, and I encourage you to try them out in your classrooms. Together, we can help our students rediscover individual pleasure by giving writing back to the body. Thank you.